So, hello there, and welcome back to yet another Night of the Movies podcast. I'm Spike Knight, and in these podcasts, I like talking all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm reviewing Wicked Little Letters. But just before I do that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, which is, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello to my viewers, but you prefer to listen to your podcasts on Spotify, well, you are in luck, as you can also listen to this podcast on Spotify at Night of the Movies on that platform. And if you are already listening to this podcast on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also check the podcast out visually. Yes, you can watch this podcast on my YouTube channel at Night of the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, whatever you may be watching or listening to this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the podcast, of course, and please leave me with some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts, because there are always things to improve on, and feedback is, as ever, much appreciated. So, let's get into it, shall we? Wicked Little Letters. So, I saw this film because I like the trailers for it. Whenever I would go to the cinema over the past couple of weeks, I'd always see the trailer for this, and it had this song, yes sir, I can be you, but I need a certain song. I've probably butchered up the lyrics of the song there, but I really liked the trailers for this film. And also, I saw that it had some acting, which I really like. Olivia Colman is just one of the best actors working today, and I've been watching in Peep Show recently. So, when it looked in this film that she was going back to her comedic roots, because that's where she got her start from. As far as I know, she got a start from Peep Show, playing quite a funny and at the same time unlikable character. When it looked like she was playing a similar character in this film, that got me interested. Plus, you got the likes of Jessie Buckley and Timothy Spall. I was thinking he had a different name then. Timothy Spall in this film, and it looked like it was going to be a lot of fun. It looked like I was going to go to the cinema and have a lot of fun watching this film. And the Google plot synopsis for this film goes as follows. When the residents of Littlehampton start receiving letters filled with obscenities and hilarious profanity, Rose, played by Jessie Buckley in the film, a rambunctious Irish immigrant, is accused of the crime. And that's pretty much all you need to know about the film before seeing it. And honestly, this film wasn't for me. I didn't hate it by any means, and I didn't think it was terrible, and it wasn't unwatchable or anything like that. But I didn't find it funny, and it's meant to be a comedy, and if you don't find a comedy funny, then, well, it's failed. I mean, it does have its perks, though. I'm not going to say it's completely terrible, like I've already mentioned. It does have its perks. You have two good lead performances. I mean, you have one fantastic lead performance in Olivia Colman. I mean, you could argue she's the protagonist of the film, you could also argue she's not, but she is one of the leads in the film, is very good. And again, as already mentioned, and as I expected what would happen, she is emulating her Peep Show performance in this film. And I like that, because I've been watching Peep Show recently. So seeing her in this film and seeing her do a similar sort of performance that she does in Peep Show made me smile. And she had the funniest moments. You can tell Olivia Colman is having a blast making this film and a blast playing this character. Jessie Buckley is also very good. Actually, I don't think she's very good. I will say that I thought she was slightly miscast. She's still good in the film. I'm not saying she's not good. And I think she throws herself into the role, which is, what any actor should do for a role like this, the role like she plays in the film. However, I felt at times that she was slightly overacting in certain scenes, to the point that it took me out of it, and it felt in part, and only in part, it wasn't throughout the entirety of the film, but it did feel in part like she was just playing a character, and I didn't feel like I was actually watching a character. I was just watching the actor do a performance. But she's good in the film. I just feel that somebody else may have played that role ever so slightly better. But again, she's good in the film, and I like Timothy Spall, and there's some other good comedic performances, and I like the story. The story's actually quite interesting. I wish I had better storytelling. I wish the story was told in a more engaging and compelling and entertaining fashion for my liking, but I liked the story and seeing the twists and the turns that the story takes, and particularly later on in the film, and third act of the film, the third and final act of the film, we get to this courtroom scene. That's quite entertaining, and learning some of the facts at the end of the film that come up. Yeah, there's a lot about the story of the film to really like, actually. It's a quite interesting story. But for me, as I've already said, the film just wasn't funny enough. It wasn't funny at all for me. And, comedy is just, it's one of those, it's a very subjective thing. And I can completely understand people, and I can completely see this happen as well, people going to see this film at the cinema and finding it absolutely hilarious, thinking it's one of the funniest films of this year. Well, so far, we're only in February, aren't we? But I can totally see people laughing out loud whilst watching this film. And there were people laughing out loud whilst watching the film in the cinema that I was in. But I didn't laugh once. I smiled a couple of times, but I didn't find anything in the film that funny. I liked in part what they were going for with the comedy, but I don't find swearing that funny, as it's... which is like the main focus of the film, the fact that these characters are swearing, and that's meant to be the hilarious aspect, and I just didn't find it that funny. And I didn't think it was nearly as sharp or as witty as it should be. This should have been a really sharp and witty and well-directed comedy, and I didn't feel that the director, and I don't know who the director is, and I'm not going to credit them because I don't think they did a particularly brilliant job, if I'm being honest. And if I'm not being honest, and what's the point of this review today? I don't think they did a particularly good job because it's hard to direct a comedy. I've spoken about all this in the past on this channel. It's hard to direct a comedy because you've got to get it right. The secret of comedy is 1, 2, 3, timing. It's timing. That's the secret of comedy, and I didn't feel that the timing in this film with the directing was particularly done well. Also, the film felt a little lifeless and stale in parts, which made for a tedious watch, and it was not the film it was advertised to be in the trailers. At least for me. The trailers, what he mentioned, had the, yes sir, I can boogie, but I need a certain song. I mean, I can't sing to save my life, but they had that song playing in the trailers, and when I heard that song, I was like, oh, this looks like a film which is going to be, right up my alley. But the film didn't have the feel of that song. It didn't have this groovy feel to it. It wasn't as enjoyable as it looked. The film looked really enjoyable from the trailers, and I felt the trailers, advertised the film to be something it wasn't. And I didn't really care about much going on because I didn't think the storytelling was that great. I didn't think it was that well written. I didn't think it was that well directed, and I felt at times that the film may have worked better as a play. I can totally see this being a stage production of some sort, and it working loads better. I was watching it thinking, why does it have to be told in a film format? I didn't quite get that. Nothing about this film screamed that it needed to be cinematic to me. I was watching it and thinking, yeah, I can see people watching this at a stage production. I can see it working as a play far better. I think it would have worked as a play far better and would have been more effective. Plus, I found the film to be a little all over the place tonally, which made the comedy even more awkward to watch because I wasn't sure I was meant to laugh in certain scenes or not. And there were certain, quote-unquote, comedic lines in the film which actors paused after saying, and it meant that there were some, and I say some very lightly there because actually quite a few awkward pauses in my cinema where people just didn't laugh at the jokes, and I'd be listening to laugh. I'd be listening to laugh. What does that even mean? I'd be listening to hear if anyone laughed behind me because I was sitting quite further down in the cinema, and no one did. And there was quite a few moments where it felt like a actor or character in the film paused after they delivered a quote-unquote comedic line. Yeah, I didn't think the comedy in the film was particularly good. I found it a slightly tedious watch. I don't think it's terrible. It's just not really for me. And that's fine. Every film I see at the cinema is going to be for me. And that's completely understandable. And again, I can see people going into this film and absolutely loving it, laughing out loud at all the jokes. And if that was the case, if you're watching this review or listening to the review today and you think, and you're one of the people who went to go and watch Wicked Little Letters and you had the best time with it, that's great. I wish I had the same experience as you. But personally for me, it wasn't any funny. And I didn't really care about what was going on. I really wish I did. I really wish this one worked, but I had a great time with it. But I didn't have a great time with it. And I did leave the cinema feeling slightly let down by what I just watched. In fact, scratch that, I left the cinema feeling very underwhelmed by what I just watched. It wasn't for me. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Wicked Little Letters, I'm going to say it's a 5 out of 10. If this film's sort of caught your interest, I'd say check it out on a streaming service. I don't advocate for streaming services at all. I think all films should release theatrically. That being said, streaming services exist, and I think this film may have worked better on a streaming platform because then my expectations would have been tempered a little. I didn't feel like I needed to see this at the cinema. Nothing about it screamed cinematic to me. It didn't help that literally minutes before the film started, we got the trailer for Dune Part 2, which is coming out next Friday, and I can't wait to see that film. And for the first half an hour of this film, not only was there someone coughing behind me, which didn't help my experience, all I was thinking about was the Dune trailer. I was like, which I know is not a fair comparison, I know that, but still, it didn't help that I just seen that, and that the person behind me was coughing, and then moved after half an hour. But I had this bleeding headache going into the cinema, and the film didn't take away from my bleeding headache that I had. And I've gone into the cinema before with headaches. That's happened quite a lot, either because I'm too tired or because I'm not feeling too well. But then the film has taken my mind off the headache. That didn't happen with this film. In fact, this film kind of enhanced my headache, and that sounds quite mean to say, but I'm just being frank. I'm just being honest. Wasn't for me. Didn't really find it that funny. Felt the storytelling could have been done better. Felt it could have been done. I felt the film could have been more sharp and witty. Still, good performances, good lead performances, some good comedic performances too. You can see what the film's going for. I like the story, I like the twists and turns in the story, and where everything ends up. It's a somewhat entertaining film, and I can see loads of people absolutely loving it and having a great time with it. It just wasn't for me, as I've already said quite a few times. And so, all in all, as I've already said, and as I'm going to say once more, Wicked Little Letters is a 5 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen Wicked Little Letters and you enjoyed it, that's great. And please let me know why I'm wrong in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching or listening to this podcast. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like and subscribe on this podcast. I look forward to many more podcasts coming very, very soon on this channel. As I've already said, thank you so much for watching or listening to this podcast. And I suppose this is it. So I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.